Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR, and I'm joined this morning by Chita Craft, KHOU 11 Meteorologist. Welcome to the show, Chita.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Happy Monday. I hope
Happy
everybody's
Monday.
doing okay on this Monday.
Yes, absolutely. So we want to talk all about hurricane season. We are in hurricane season, so we want to hear from you. What's to come this season? What can we expect? Before we get into all that, though, we want to hear a little bit about you. Many of us see you every morning, but we want to hear a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Oh, okay. Well, again, I'm so honored to be here this morning. Thank you all for tuning in. I know it's not easy on a Monday morning. Hopefully, you've had a cup of coffee or two. And we have been having some signal issues. So I want to say that up front that I'm sorry if this glitches or if the audio, if there's anything weird. But good morning. Yes, my name is Chita Craft. I'm the morning meteorologist here at KHOU. I'm actually in our main studio downstairs, and I work Monday through Friday in the mornings. My name Cheetah. Okay, so it's unusual. We have 5 generations of mother-daughter cheetahs. So my mom's name is Cheetah, and her mom, and my great grandmother, and then I have a daughter who's 3 now, and her name is also Cheetah. So it makes it kind of fun in our family. It's been a name that's been passed down. And originally it was Conchita, C-O-N, C-H-I-T-A. And then, okay, so I have 2 kids, a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old little girl. I married. I've lived in Houston for almost 12 years. I moved here in 2011, the worst drought that we have experienced, and the most consecutive triple digit days. In fact, fun fact in 2011 that we've had. So that is what I moved to Houston with. And then since then, I've experienced all types of weather extremes here. So I moved to Houston for this job. I was working in Northern California with an ABC affiliate, and I was excited to have challenges in forecasting. I did not know the road that would lead to. So since 2011, leading up to this year, we have experienced it all. And that's really why I was so excited to speak on this platform with everyone, because we're a community that we all work together during these weather events. With the job that y'all do and the job that I do, it's important that we all come together and work together. So the flooding in neighborhoods to, not only drought conditions, but then our freeze and how that impacts then heating and cooling in your home and what you need to do to prepare for all weather extremes. It's so important. So I appreciate you having me on. And I love to talk about this. So I will take this conversation down the path that you really want it. So we can talk about
Excellent.
it, really anything. It's my joy. I love when someone stops me at the grocery store and is like, what's the weather today? Because I love to talk about it. I love it. So thank you for having me on.
Well, that passion you have for it definitely shines through. We can see that. And I do have questions planned for Cheetah this morning, but if you have questions as you're tuning in live, please type those in and we'll answer as many of those as we can in the time that we have today. We're going to start, Cheetah, though, with the question that's likely on everyone's mind. What can we expect for the 2023 hurricane season?
Isn't that every year? It begins June 1st and continues through November 30th, hurricane season. So every year, you just never know what the year will unfold. I do want to make the first point before we get into the numbers. It doesn't matter if we have 5 storms that form or 50. The number one takeaway here for today, especially with hurricane season, we cannot forecast at this point where these storms will decide to make landfall. So it is important that you're always prepared. So we'll talk about the numbers and the forecast and what we're expecting. But at the end of the day, you have to be prepared. It really only does take one. I mean, we've learned from the past, but let's dive into it. Yeah. Let's talk about this year. So NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has released their outlook for the year, and it's about average to, you could even say slightly below average. Again, I hesitate to say that because I don't want you to let your guard down by any means. But we'll get into kind of the reasons why. But the actual number for the storms is right around average. The number of hurricanes forecasted is right around average. And then the same when we're talking about major hurricanes, that's a category 3 or higher. So, and we take those averages over a 30-year period. So we're looking at the past for that. Some years, of course, the past 5 years above, some below. But yes, do you want me to go into the names and that sort of thing,
Sure,
Christina? Or
absolutely.
because we're going to get into El Nino, or we can talk about El Nino and why as well.
Let's talk about El Nino because I think some of us have heard a little bit
Okay.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? It's really become popular, I would say, over the past 5 to 10 years, talking about El Nino versus La Nina and what that means for rainfall throughout the year, for our temperatures, but of course for hurricane season. In particular, for hurricane season, it actually can reduce the amount of storms. And the reason, it's all connected to the trade winds. They're always there. So you get a convergence right along the equator of our northerly trade winds coming out of the east and our southerly trade winds coming out of the south. And both of those, as they continue to come together, they actually can lower the winds, but also create cooler water temperatures. So you have to remember that hurricanes, they need warm water, they need low winds, and some energy. So typically, when those trade winds come together, they spark up thunderstorms, and that creates unstable air. And that unstable air is what can initially kick off a tropical wave to a depression or a storm or a hurricane. But when those winds start to weaken, it doesn't allow, the same storm formation. Am I glitching? Am I okay? Can you hear me normal?
You sound perfect. The video is a little
I do?
glitchy,
Okay,
but yeah.
good. Okay, amazing. As long as everything sounds good. It's really weird on my end, but no big deal. So yeah, basically that's so when we're talking about El Nino or La Nina, it's as far as the water temperature, the winds that are concerned. That's really what drives it. We can often, with these trade winds, kick off some dust or some sand off the coast of Africa. You've probably heard that in years past. And that is what gives us the initial energy for a tropical wave. And from that wave, the warmer the water, the deeper convection of those thunderstorms. And so as those thunderstorms build and it's creating that unstable air, that's really what drives a hurricane, those initial stages of it. But with the lack of winds, that's what can really energize those thunderstorms to become a rapid hurricane. But when we have those stronger trade winds, that's what actually limits the development of those hurricanes. So with stronger winds, it creates more wind shear, shears off the tops of those thunderstorms, and that's what limits the storm count. So that's really why Colorado State University, we use their forecast, and NOAA both have about the same, about average storms in the forecast. So you can see the numbers here, 12 to 17, our average is 14. As far as the hurricanes go, between 5 to 9, our average is about 7. And then major hurricanes, again, the category 3 or higher, we're looking at 1 to 4, and that's about average, but again, it only does take one. So we will see. The El Nino is fairly neutral right now, but I'm expecting as we get into August, El Nino generates a little bit more. I'm talking about El Nino and the lack of storms. However, we've already had our first tropical storm of the season. It was Tropical Storm Arlene, which was actually ahead of schedule. So again, when we talk about statistics and what we're expecting, already we've had our first tropical storm ahead of season. So it didn't disrupt anybody. It was basically a fish storm out there, but
Yeah. Okay, we did have one question already come in from Annette.
okay.
She was just asking the difference between El Nino and La Nina.
So El Nino usually produces, as far as our weather is concerned, it usually can mean drier conditions than normal, where La Nina can mean wetter. And then as far as hurricane specifically development, tropical storm development, El Nino is lower storm count, so fewer storms to be expected. La Nina is what we saw 2 years ago when we kind of broke the record for the amount of storms. So think La Nina, higher storm count, El Nino, lower storm count.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
But
did you want to look at some of the hurricane names? You already mentioned Arlene, but here's...
I think this is fun every year. You can kind of see what's on the list, and we'll see how far we get. But from Brett, do we have any Cindy's or Dawn, Franklin, all the way, I don't know, Katia, Lee, Reno? We'll see how far we get in the list. If it goes to what the forecast holds, we'll actually stay in the alphabet. But in the years past, we've surpassed this and continued through the Greek alphabet. So
Okay.
we will see what the season holds. But yeah, it's always fun to look at the names.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
so you've talked a little bit about the conditions, that are basically brought on by El Nino or La Nina. Are there any other conditions that we should kind of look out for to expect a hurricane?
This year we met with the National Hurricane Center, and we met with part of the crew from the Air Force Reserve, who are our hurricane hunters. And when we're talking about what to expect, typically we can show you out 5 days. Different this year, the National Hurricane Center is now showing products that are 7 days in advance. It's tough because with the development of that, a lot of this newer product model data is what is allowing for that. We can, see further down as far as model data goes, but I use that with caution because if you see some of just in the past 25 years, a lot of the tropical storms and hurricanes that have been the most devastating here locally have been from rapid intensification, meaning we see these develop about 2 or 3 days out, and then they rapidly develop over a 24 to 48-hour period. So even though we have this product data now that you can show a timeline over 7 days instead of 5, which that's great. It's great for social media. We love to get the word out. It's great from the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service. But you always really, this time of the year, it's important to stay close to the forecast, which I know
Okay.
everyone on this call does. But it's that rapid intensification, especially mid-August through mid-September, which can be really serious. That's when our water temperatures are the warmest. That's usually when our winds are the calmest. So we have low wind shear, and that's typically why we see the most storms during that time. The last point I'll make to that question, Christina, is the peak of hurricane season here is September the 10th. And if you look at our history, yeah, we've had storms before that and after that, but that time period is when it peaks. So late, I would say, mid to late August through mid September, it's really, really important along any of the Gulf Coast states to really stay in tune with the local tropical forecast because things can change very quickly.
Okay, very good. There was a quick question. Well, who comes up with the names for these storms? Is
Oh
there
my
a
goodness.
vote?
So they're
Yeah.
planned 5 years out. And what's interesting about hurricane names, they are always in the rotation unless the name is retired. So let's say like Hurricane Ian from last year, which was a category 5, extremely devastating in Florida. You will never see Ian again. You'll never see Harvey again. You'll never see Allison again, right? So they go from not only the category, but also the destruction that it's done. So basically, you'll see a lot of the same names repeated unless they're retired. And also to that point, the letter I is the most retired letter in the alphabet.
Oh, wow.
It's the I name.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So I do see there are a couple other questions. I want to get into a question that I have for Cheetah, though, which is a common question, and I think we all might wonder this
Okay.
when we hear you say it on the news. But what is the difference between a watch and a warning?
I am so glad you asked this question because it's really important. And I don't know if you've ever either seen a meme or a graphic, but I'm going to use like tacos as an example. So a watch is basically when you have all the ingredients, your lettuce, the shells, the beef, the cheese, all the things for your tacos. And so it's there. It's ready to make the taco. That's the watch. A warning is when you've got the taco and you're about to eat it. So here locally, when there's a watch that's saying, hey, all the conditions are favorable for this to happen. A thunderstorm watch. And, this is specifically about hurricane season. So a hurricane watch versus a hurricane warning. But you can also think of this as a severe thunderstorm watch, a tornado watch. Both have the same idea. The ingredients are there for something potentially to happen, a warning is it is active, it is imminent. It is now time to take action. That's what a warning means. When you
Okay.
get that warning on your phone, and I'm sure with this group of people, you all have several alerts that come down, but it is very important that you take action.
Okay, very good. Well, your time in Houston has served you well because we love tacos, so that's the only story we needed to hear.
I know.
So, so along those same lines, we had a question about the difference between a tropical storm and a hurricane. Here we are. I was trying to find it. What is the difference between a tropical storm and a hurricane? I'm in Livingston, and yesterday we heard of 2 tornado touchdowns.
Yeah, you know what? Well, that's incredible. I don't maybe let's see, you were probably from Saturday night, maybe the thunderstorms that were through Livingston actually got hit really hard. It was really isolated of areas that did. Now, I didn't hear about that, but you could have had some wind damage. We did have some really strong, like 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts Saturday evening into Sunday. Not inside the city, but yeah, in Livingston and portions of Liberty County really, really got hit. Um, but
The tropical
but
storm versus a hurricane is the
well, I was going to say,
yeah.
okay, so you know, this can relate to just everyday weather, the thunderstorms that we saw Saturday night as well. But for tropical storms and just hurricanes in general, so it takes a closed low, so a low at the surface in the ocean to be a tropical storm. So when we're tracking a tropical wave or a tropical depression, first we're looking at the winds, we're looking at the millibars, we're looking at the pressure dropping. So we look at how low that is and how it's expected to go. That's why they can forecast, hey, it's a tropical depression now, but based on the pressure, it's going to be dropping where it could be deemed as a tropical storm. But really, it's based on winds. So, category 1 hurricane would be 74 miles per hour. A tropical storm would be 39. So that's basically what the categories are. And the classifications from then the hurricanes basically go up from there,
Okay.
purely based on wind. But we look at the pressure for indication of its strengthening.
All right, very good. Thank you for that. So we also wanted to talk a little bit because we've been talking about hurricanes. We've been talking about the storms and stuff and such, but we know hurricanes aren't the only source of flooding. So can you share the method in which you track different types of flood threats? So bayou or river levels, high water spots, and of course storm surge.
You know what? I love this question. So there's two real model products that are popular that you hear about and see about on TV: the GFS or the Euro, the global forecast system. And now the Euro, if you actually see the complete text of it, it's ECMWF. I wanted to make sure I got that right. So the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast. Those are the two most popular products. They are government run and they forecast storms, of course, tropical systems, but any storms all over the world. And those are the two most popular products. They're paid for by the government, they're used by the government. Then from there, you can have private sectors that they come out with their own model products, and they have become really, really good. So I'm going to come back to how we forecast. But speaking of hurricane season, when you see the spaghetti plots and you see the lines forecasting for a hurricane, and you'll see 20 of them, and maybe all of them are going one way except one, or they're all going all these different ways. That is part of the GFS and the Euro. But then those are a lot of private product data as well. So we can show you what all these models. So, and when we say that, those are satellites and they're picking up on the moisture content. And then from there, it's basically just like an equation that is inputted into a computer data system that generates the forecast. So temperature, wind, pressure, all of those, all of that comes together. And that's basically what gives us the best forecast. Now, coming to flooding, within that you have an ocean model, land soil product, and sea ice. All of these are part of this data that is basically interpreted that we're able to pinpoint along different geography spots. So we use the model products, but it's really important that we understand the geography here. So let's say from all of the concrete now downtown to our bayous and our creeks and our rivers. We all know flood prone areas, right? That see a quick 2 or 3 inches of rain and you have high water. So it's important that when we see that data come in from the satellites, from the data, from the models, that then we're saying, okay, over these areas, these are areas that have the potential to flood. So even let's say Jeff Lindner with the Harris County Flood Control District within our city, he will send a tweet out, okay, we're expecting, let's say, 4 or 5 inches of rain in Kingwood. Heads up San Jacinto River at the East and the West Fork, because we know that that's a popular area that floods. Or maybe specific bayous and creeks that we know. Cypress Creek is a popular area, that can see high water. So all of this, when you see the numbers that are, let's say, forecasted from afternoon thunderstorms or tropical data that comes in from a tropical system, it's important that we understand our own communities, because we know what can flood different areas, if that makes sense. There are some areas that have more soil and land base, and they can take in, 2, 3, 4 inches of rain. However, you put that in downtown, and it's, put all of the buildings and all the concrete in, and it can create high water like that. So
Right.
both of those I think are really important. And that's where even working with, y'all, that if you know a specific area that does, we want to hear from you too. Tell us that, some areas where you've seen flooded homes that are regular, we can help that too. Because that can also come down to drainage and sewers that, we can help provide some help there. But I think both of those are the biggest ways that we forecast. We take the
Okay.
data that we get in from models, and specifically those satellites, and short term, they work really well. Long term, it's difficult to pinpoint exact forecasts. So anytime you see a forecast 7 days out, just know that there's going to be change.
Right.
That forecast is not set in stone. 1 to 2 days out, most of the products handle it pretty well. And
Okay.
as specifically with tropical systems, we also go by averages and how they've been recently doing. So let's say the GFS has been performing really well, at the forecasts have been accurate. Okay, statistics are showing that that's probably a better product to use. But that's why a lot of times on TV, we like to show you both, because then you get to see what we see. And I love when people check that out. If you want to go to the National Hurricane Center website and you want to see some of the watches or the advisories, I think that's great. Or the National Weather Service, as long as it's from a group of people who, accredited people, that you're not getting this forecast from somebody online that likes to just follow models for fun, that sort of thing.
Okay. And is storm surge, is that measured kind of in the same
It
mathematical
is.
process that
It sure
you,
is.
yeah.
It is exactly the same way. That's exactly right. So storm surge in particular is on the right side of a system. And so that's usually the dirty side. And the reason why, around an area of low pressure, you get counterclockwise spin. So with storm surge, it is sucking all of the energy out of the ocean, basically. So those, above 80-degree water temperature readings, and it's basically forcing all of that water above land. So you see how quickly that can rise. I mean, 2 feet, 6 feet, up to 12 and 14 feet for that storm surge, is overtaking a home at that point. But that is actually, storm surge is the most deadly and destructive part of a hurricane. And so that is why you hear it warned. You run from the water, you hide from the wind. So if it's a wind event that we're expecting, you find your safe place in your home. You don't want to be by any windows, doors, anything, of course, that has glass or anything that is breakable, that could hurt you. You want to be in the most interior part of your home for a wind event. Now, for storm surge, flooding, no, you have to get out of there. But yeah, that's why with storm surge, it's on the right side of storm, and that's why often you'll hear about, the dirty side. But that's really where it is the most deadly.
Okay. I like that motto, run from the water, hide from the wind.
Yeah,
I will remember that.
yeah, yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I said I know it's an easy one to remember, which
Yeah.
is important. Yeah.
So, what can people start doing now to prepare their families and pets for any potential storms that might be coming our way?
I think the most important thing is always to have a plan. Did anyone lost power Thursday night. I know our family did.
Yeah.
I mean, and think those thunderstorms just ripped through. We lost power, I don't know, I think from about 6 p.m. through 2 a.m. Thursday evening. And it really hit me there. I'm like, you know what? The preps that you make now, they're going to be good all year. The freeze, anytime that you lose power. So the thing with your family, you need to have all your boxes checked. We have a list at KHOU.com you can go to. You can go to the American Red Cross. But bottom line, it's all your big things. Of course, water, but think of like your battery flashlights. Think if you do have any medication that is critical that maybe you can keep and, of course, check the expiration dates. But you have all of those things, be prepared that if you needed to leave your home or if you were in your home and you didn't have power for an extended period of time, 2 days to 2 weeks. I don't know if anybody on this call was here with Ike or Rita, but those are, Harvey, of course, but those are all events that are so powerful of, how long we were all without power. So really making your checklist, having a plan. I think also the big thing to take away that we were discussing with our local city officials, it's important that you know when to evacuate and when not to. So when you are under an evacuation zone, it is time to go. You have to heed the warning. But if they're telling you to stay, then it's going to create more problems on the roadways. So I think that, and also, of course, if you can have a generator. I know not everybody can. We don't have one. We need to get one, I know, in my home, so I get it. But it is nice, even on
Yeah.
like a Thursday evening when we see those severe thunderstorms. But just having a plan, I think as long as you really know what you would do in an event of an emergency with your family, I think that's really the best case. You can go through, I mean, I think there's probably 50 boxes you could check to make sure you're prepared. An overnight bag, like all of those things. So it depends on how deep of a dive you really want to do. But just having that initial plan to being
Yeah.
prepared is probably the most important thing.
I would love to hear people's plans in the comments. So those of you that are tuned in live, tell us how you
There you go.
prepare. We would love to hear it. I know myself, Cheetah, we live in Galveston County. I have Clear Creek about a quarter mile from my house. So we have tubs that we
Yeah.
keep every year with all of our battery backups and flashlights, and they're color coded. We bring them down at the beginning of June, but then we also make tubs that are go tubs if we,
I
with
know.
perishable food items, with blankets, with different things we might not. You need blankets in the summer, but we have them. So anything
No,
that
it's
we might
true.
need to throw in the car and go if there's a
You
storm
know,
coming our way. So
It's true. And, of course, backup battery power for your phone. If you lose power, you're going to be able, you won't have the ability to charge your phone. But even if you lose cell signal, you need to think of, who is your contact? Where would you drive? How are you going to communicate and let other people know that you're okay? That you're safe during, I mean, this is, now we're talking about a real emergency here. But yeah, even just having the backup battery for your phone, it's just so important when you lose power. If it's dark out, you've got to have that go-to spot where everything is ready, that you'll know what to do. Even down to having something for the kids to keep them calm. If you're scared, they're scared,
yeah.
so you have to have those kind of plans in place, and we have that too. But I know even sorry, the engineers are making, but there we do that in our house too. So
Okay. And Britt made a good comment. She said, I keep my gas tank above, half tank at all times during hurricane season. That's another really good one. So type those in.
it is.
Any things that you are doing throughout hurricane season to prepare yourself, your family, even for your clients, which leads to a question that came in from Susan. She was asking, what could we do as, because you were mentioning they're paying attention just as much as meteorologists are. What could we do as
Yeah.
watchdogs or advocates to help homeowners prepare for high water possibilities? She's thinking things like keep storm drains free from debris.
Yes, I would say that is the number one thing out of all the stories that we have done, as much as you could prepare, yeah, with your storm drains. And I mean, it seems kind of like a no-brainer that you would do that, but no, you do. You have to make sure all of that is clear. It's easy for debris. I mean, even think of the thunderstorms Thursday night, or maybe even from Saturday night for some of you. You have downed limbs, all that can clog up the gutters really, really fast. And that can create high water really quickly. And maybe not even so much for all of your neighbors, but just whatever you can do, particular right around your own home, is is a great idea. I know we did a story as well about leveling in your backyard to see the level so you can see where the rain would want to drain by itself like that, and even across your street as well. At this point, I mean, we're no strangers to rain and flooding here in Houston, so you kind of see some patterns in your street. But yeah, I would say specifically, especially with new homeowners, going through the risks and really making sure that they understand, especially if they're new to Houston, some of the real threats that we get here. I mean, sometimes, you can go with these, big hypotheticals, but every year we have very serious flooding here in Houston. So making sure that they really understand that, because when you move from other cities, it's not that common. They're not used to it. And a lot of the severe weather that we see.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say, really pinpointing to new homeowners of really what the real risks are. And I always love when we can work with y'all like partners, and let's say even through social media when we have an event coming up, even if the numbers change a little bit, as much as we can share, talk about, get the word out, people are more prepared. And it has been proven to save lives. The more you can get that word out, then people will understand, okay, we have a severe flood threat overnight. We're going to stay home until we see that the coast is clear.
Okay. We'd be remiss if we didn't also mention flood insurance. We've talked about it many
Yeah.
times on this program in the past, but that's another way to answer Susan's question there. That's another way to really prepare your clients and customers, is talking to them about the importance of flood insurance. The percentage, I don't remember offhand, but it's a very low percentage of the amount of people that have flood insurance, even lower than it was during Hurricane Harvey at this time. So
I mean,
tell
it's
them,
bad. I
yeah.
cannot tell you how many stories we have done where someone has said, I have lived in my home for over 30 years. I never thought it would happen to me. They don't have flood insurance, and it's happened. I mean, it is really that time where you never think it is. And so it is so worth it, because here in Houston, even from 2016, I don't know if y'all remember, the tax day floods, the Memorial Day floods. It was just, a series of events, and so many stories we have done with people without flood insurance. And it takes 30 days to kick in. You have to remember, you can't get flood insurance when you see the storm coming in 2 days. You have to have it already. So I just think the more that people really understand that, which y'all showing the house. I mean, it really is. You're kind of like our first liners, so that would be great. We try to get the word out as much as we can here at the station too. We do a lot of stories about flood insurance.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much. And we've shared several of the links that Cheetah has mentioned in the comments, but we also did just share har.com/flood. Please check that out. It's an excellent resource to use for yourself, but also to share with your clients and customers. Cheetah, you've mentioned several things, and most people know to prepare with water and non-perishable foods, flashlights. Are there any other preparations that you'd recommend that maybe aren't as obvious?
I definitely think going through that big checklist, but I mean, like even medication, definitely having, like you said, batteries, of course, non-perishable food. But even going on to more of the communication side, just really listening to city officials. I also can't tell you how many stories that I've seen. I was in college when Katrina and Rita hit at Mississippi State, and so many people, I've heard from college through now, they don't think it's going to be that bad. They either think it's an exaggerated forecast, it's not really going to happen, all of these things. I know, I get it. And sometimes we're like, okay, good. It didn't pan out the way we thought it was going to be, but you just don't know. And when we have the watch, the ingredients are there. It's really important that you listen to the city officials, or you really take something serious. If they say stay off the road, stay off the roads. If and we take a lot of that information, and of course we try to pass it on to you. But I just think in preparation in general, going through and really thinking about what your family would specifically need. Do you have a pet? Would you need to drop them off? Can you have extra dog food, cat food at hand, so you're prepared, to be with them as well? Yeah, the communication aspect, but it's really just thinking of you and your specific family, of exactly what y'all would need. But of
Yeah.
course, the basics, what you said, I mean, water and non-perishable foods, those are big. Think about the freeze, or, when you've lost power, what are your go-tos? Those food, that water.
Yeah, very good. Scott McAllister, I just want to read a few of the comments that came in with ways that people are preparing. Said, we prepare for the after the storm too. Water, bug spray, sunscreen, baby wipes to freshen up.
Yes.
Yeah, so the after the storm, I mean, similar to, I guess it was Ike, where many people didn't
Yes.
have power for weeks.
You know what? That is so true because even if you don't have any damage from the storm, if you're left without power for weeks, all of those things that you need, and you know how the store shelves are here, when somebody knows the storm is coming, everything is gone. So it is, if you can have all of that in a bag, that's a great idea. Yeah. I mean, especially if you have a baby. I mean, that it's really important that you would have an emergency kit ready to go. Oh, those are great ideas.
Very
Way to go,
good.
Scott.
Yeah. Rhonda said, encourage your homeowners and neighbors to adopt a drain through the city of Houston. So great tip there. We could probably share a link to that if someone can look it up. Annette just made another comment. Have a disaster evacuation kit, protect personal documents, special items. So we haven't mentioned the documents. That's another great one.
That's a
Safeguard,
great one.
yeah, financial
Yeah.
and personal medical documents. So great tip there. Okay. Oh, and Peggy also said, and make sure you have a rake for cleaning up the drains and sewers. So
You know
absolutely,
what?
that's an
It's so
important one.
important because, also with that, Peggy, that's such a good one. Think a storm can pass, and let's say you can get redevelopment afterwards. So you may clean up for more to come. So it is important to have that. Yeah, that's a great
Okay.
point.
Well, Cheetah, our members are thanking you in the comments, are saying this was so helpful, so much great information. Is there anything else that you want to share today?
First of all, thank you all so much for logging on and watching and listening, on a Monday morning. I really appreciate it. I think the number one thing though, weather at the end of the day, it's not a perfect science, and Houston has every kind of weather extreme. It's always our job to kind of give you the watch or the possibilities. So sometimes, yes, the forecast can change. So everything can happen. A part of it can happen. It's not a perfect science and it never will be. But a lot of the model data is getting so much better over just the past 10 years, especially 20 years, that, I'm always thankful to everyone who really heeds the warnings and the advice. And it makes it easier on everyone. When we all work together, makes it a lot easier. And, don't give us such a hard time. Sometimes the forecast isn't always right, but no, we have a great team here. We all love what we do, and we do the best that we possibly can to get information out to help you, whether it be the heat, the storms, tropical activity. We really try our best. So thank you all for hanging in there with
Yeah.
us and help spreading the word as well to new homeowners. And makes it a lot easier on us when you help pass the message along as well.
Absolutely. Just there was a lot more thank yous coming in, but to add to your point, be kind to your neighbors. Somebody
Yes.
said that as well, and we've definitely seen the resilience that Houston has after a storm and how neighbors come together. So great point there that was mentioned, and also be kind to your meteorologist. I'll say it for
Yes.
Cheetah. Very good.
I get it though. I also get it.
Yeah,
My husband gives me the
absolutely.
hardest time out of anyone, so don't worry. Trust me. I get
Very
it.
good. Well,
I
Cheetah,
get it.
again, thank you so much for your time today. This has been wonderful. To our members, that is it for this Member Focus Monday. We will be back next Monday at 9 a.m. with HER Director of MLS, Sean Delphine. So be sure to tune in and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.